It is the final word story time, 195. Adam Collins in London, Jeff Lemon back in Lisbon after his Spanish journey the last week or so. We're with you for Westfield London and Westfield Stratford City. More extra, less ordinary. If you jump on board with us at patreon.com/the final word, you can get the ad-free feed. We've got some data for that yesterday. Lots of people are taking up the ad-free feed and they are supporting us in the process. So jump on board with Patreon, which makes this history show possible. The 195th time we've hit go on this type of program. 195, Jeff, what jumps out to you? What memorable 195? There are a few of them.
Yeah, there are a few. 195 for me is generally sitting in the stands at the MCG after Virender Sehwag's been cutting sick during the Boxing Day test, and he's just popped. I always forget whether it's Stuart McGill or Simon Kadich. I think it's Simon Kadich who he's popped over long on for a 6, and it's carried. He's gone from 189 to 195, and he's like, that felt good. I might do that again. And he tries to do it again, and it ends up in the hands of the fielder at long on, who might have been Brad Williams. I haven't looked this up, but yeah, there and thereabouts.
Yes, I think it was a fast bowler. It's one of those great quiz questions that occasionally on SEN we do the lunchtime quiz, which is fucking chaos every time we do it.
Yeah.
But whenever we get Cat on there, we weave in that he got Sehwag out on 195 and he enjoys that. So he's absolutely ruthless on that, Simon. Most of the former cricketers we get on there, play along with the listener, let them get to 2-all or whatever. Cat just goes, no, fuck it, I'm winning 5-0. I just love his attitude towards being so competitive. He's an absolute belter, Cat. 195s. I've got, remember there was the 195 the day Peggy was born. Remember we were in the hospital and, she came quite quickly in the end, but it was when Usman Khawaja was declared on 195 a couple of years ago in that very unusual situation. I don't think anyone's been declared on that close to 200, but to give themselves any chance of winning, they couldn't justify bowling or batting rather into the 5th day. So whatever it was. And so I know that happened on Insurrection Day, hang Mike Pence, well, a year after Insurrection Day. And so that stands out. One other one, Jeff, that I spotted on the way through. So Alan Davison, Cat 195. We know a fair bit about Davo. We've done Davo on the show as often as we've done almost anybody. What we haven't done before, though, is a one-test wonder from the Freaks. I'm not going to give any more information out other than that, but the name is Alf Dipper. He played one test match in 1921 for England. Yeah, you got Dipper. It. Alf Dipper. Alf Robert Di Domenico. It was in homage. And he played one test.
Flamin' Galaz and Dipper. That's like the most Australian name of all time, and this is an England test cricketer.
And he was from your county. He was from Gloucestershire. He was a member of the Freaks. So I feel like that's going to be a lot of fun, and we need someone to cue it up for us at some point. I'm not going to do the story now, but I really want to. So Alf Dipper, one test back in the interwar period, perfect, dusty old bastard energy. We've got lots of new numbers to come at you today. Actually, not lots. We've got a decent swathe of them, though, and a couple of revisits if we have time. I'm not blessed with loads of it, because I've got to rush off to a game this afternoon playing for the Lord's Taverners. That's why I'm already dressed in my Taverners tie and all the rest of it. That worked quite nicely last week.
Do they make you play in the tie? Do you have to wear the collar and tie when you play? Is that a Taverners thing?
No. It's just we've got a lunch beforehand. Well, it's more an afternoon tea, I think, before the game starts. But either way, we've been asked to, coat and tie and all the rest of it, and we're playing at I don't know who exactly. It's a Duke of something or another's. Not Duke of Norfolk, but it's Earl of something. Earl of somewhere in Sussex.
Earl Grey.
G'day, Earl.
Perhaps.
Earl Grey.
G'day, Earl.
That's the guy. G'day, Earl.
My name is Earl. And do you, after lunch, do you just flex the shirt off and tear it off, and then you're in your playing kit underneath? What's the reveal?
Yeah,
is it full Monty style with the studded trousers that you can down the legs that you can just whip off?
Well, Monty is playing, so we could ask Monty to do the full Monty for me. Maybe
you won't get
before
it.
We play. We've got a few. No, improbable.
Remember when they gave him the quiz question? That was remember what film is set in a steelworks town?
Which 1997 Academy Award-winning film where men strip when they're unemployed? Dream Boys.
Dream Boys.
Yes, that's. Well, I might mention the Dream Boys in a sec. Who, may or may not have been named after that. But that just to go back to the tabs for a sec, we did quite a good job last week of accidentally cranking up the marathon machine. So thanks to everyone who's been in touch. London Marathon, Edinburgh Marathon, all of that kind of energy. We aren't quite ready to formalise any of this yet, but it's great to know that we've got lots of people who want to be part of it next year. 75 runners for 75 years of the charity. I think we're sort of in for 40 to 50 grand or something. It's going to be great. It's going to be bloody hard work, but the more people that sign up, the better it will be. And this year was an extraordinary celebration. So,
and I want one.
And
I
of course,
want at least one 75-year-old runner. So if you're out there, or if you know someone who's a keen runner into their advanced years, I'll take 75 plus. You know, if I'm not going to rule you out just because you've turned 76. But I want one runner who's already past 75.
I like that. What we have had is a little bit of energy on the group, on the WhatsApp group, which I don't know how closely you read it, Jeff. You are in there, where I think Pat McKeon found the world record for running a marathon in your cricket kit, and it looks vaguely achievable. Like we've got people who run marathons in a quicker time than that. So that's sort of there for someone. And also Hayley Fuller, who's our standard bearer when it comes to fundraising, and she's just a tremendous taverner as well as Final Word member. She's going to do the haggis, as we mentioned last week, the 5K, 10K, half marathon across the weekend.
She's exploring the option. I'm not going to shackle her to that commitment as yet.
I think she has. I think she has. She told me the other day, I don't know, after a glass of wine or something, but she did tell me she was going to pad up for it. So that's quite exciting. So a bit of energy
after a glass of wine gives you an out. You know, there's a legal loophole there.
It might be a bit Olympic as well, right? Like I am feeling Olympic today. I think we all are feeling Olympic at the moment. You kind of watch these. Look, we're off to Spain as we're on a family holiday tomorrow, and I'm taking my runners. You know, I'm intending on running every day on holiday in Menorca. So whether I do or don't, it's the spirit of this. It's the Olympic spirit.
Do any triple jumping while you're out there?
Do some breakdancing and some skateboarding as well to complete the set. And speaking of participation,
take your air rifle, do some little. I'm excited. Once this recording ends, I'm excited to watch Simone Biles go around in the team.
It's not till this afternoon.
Gymnastics,
Yeah, I'm planning on sneaking away from the lunch and watching a few of the apparatus, because the team's event's a bit of a marathon of itself, because they do 6 rounds. And the men's event yesterday was out of control. It was so fucking good. Yesterday was a great Olympic day, full stop. Anyway, I might talk more about the Olympics in the Westfield read, but Biles, if she can, if she can keep her shit together.
Round though, my God, just like coming back from losing it last time, and then her qualifying round to just dominate across the apparatus in the qualies was extraordinary. So. Yeah, it's one of the great gymnastics team's event is one of the great Olympic events, and we've had some great moments already, haven't we? The French rugby sevens win, like it was. It's like watching. It was bonkers when Dupont coming on at halftime and just turning the whole game around and beating 6-5 Matildas. Fuck me,
6-5 Matildas from what was it, 5-2 down? I missed all of this. I was playing cricket, but 5-2 down. So. Bit going on there. They're going a little bit better than the Opals, who lost to Nigeria yesterday. That wasn't ideal in terms of team sports. Participation stuff, Jeff. We teased last week the Dream Boys Final Word game on the 20th of September. That's all locked in. I spoke to Dulwich during the week. We're good as gold on that front. There's a bit there for the Final Word team. We had another win for the Dream Boys on Sunday. That's 9 from 9 this season. We're looking at invincible stuff here. I led the side in that win. It was a strong Final Word energy to it. So we had Nathan Johns making his debut, who, yes, has got a first-class cap. That does help. But he co-hosted our Ireland special a couple of months ago. Lockie McCorkerdale, with the best name in cricket, in my view.
The Corker.
Or Corker, as we're calling him. He's been a patron of ours for a couple of years. He made his debut. A listener of ours, Nick Stragalinos, Big Stragger, made his maiden 50 for the club. Another patron of ours, Pat Ben Mendelsohn, the Chinnastrappy Stadium, Hargraves, took 4 for 17 and was the match winner at the end. Threw the ball to him, took 3 for none to bowl him out with 8 overs to go in a declaration game. I said to him, I'd taken a few by this point, and said to him, I would love nothing more. I'll be the happiest captain if I don't have to bowl another ball here today. Next 2 balls, 2 wickets, we win the game. So that was all rather exciting. So the Final Word does have the chance to break this run. I do feel that conflicted loyalties, allegiances here. But yes, it was lovely to have a lot of Final Word people.
As long as you bring the form. I heard a whisper that you made runs. Did you make runs?
I got quick runs. I enjoyed some declaration batting towards the end, where I gave myself a window to bat and got 63 quite quickly. So that's fun to do that on a Sunday afternoon. Just on Final Word ODB game, got Jack Rule umpiring. He umpired the game I played at Wormsley last week. I thought you'd appreciate this, Jeff, where I turned out unexpectedly for the combined minor counties team, which, as we know, occasionally had first class status way back when.
Like that's a genuine cricket team.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, it was a 6-a-side tournament and a lot of people were drinking, not me, and I was meant to be there commentating. One thing led to another. I ended up in the team, And we won the fucking flag. We won the premiership, the six-a-side premiership at Wormsley. So some pretty good players in the team. I loved turning out with Dan Lincoln, who I've commentated on before for Middlesex, his brother Josh, Toby Greatwood, and Cam Hemp, who's been part of the under-23 Victorian setup, and a gun in the ones at Paran, who's proing over here as well in minor county land. So, that was a fun thing to do. But Jack Rule, who was umpiring that day, is umpiring our game as well. So get involved. Let us know. finalwordcricket@gmail.com if you want to be part of the day, and book it off. The game will start at 4 p.m. at Dulwich on the 20th of September.
Very good. Let's get into what we're here to do, which is play some Nerd Pledge. Nerd Pledge, the game that we play with nice people on the internet who fund this program. And they do it in this manner. They send through their contributions, not in the normal configuration of currency that you might expect, but a very specific configuration. For instance, Steve Dodkin has sent through $8.41 in the currency of the Commonwealth of Australia. You could just send through the number. Some people send through a clue as well. Steve has, and after we went back to him one time to clarify, once or twice, added to it. Lay the clue on them, Adam.
Not a well-known name, but a character I think you will enjoy. I heard about this cricketer on a county commentary stream, and he seems to have been a colourful character. You need to go back 100 years on Cricinfo. It looks like there is a World Cup connection by birthplace. Now, I know a lot of work has gone into this answer. I've seen the workings, so I'm looking forward to hearing what actually comes of it all.
Yeah, so our Nerd Pledge sleuth group was back and forth on this. Steve's been waiting for literally weeks because... So I'm not going to take you through all the dead ends, all the things we thought that it might have been that it ended up not being, because this answer will be long enough as it is, having got to the story. Normally I would do that because it's entertaining. There were a bunch of different things. The last thing we ended up that we were pretty happy with was Ted McDonald, the great Australian fast bowler of the 1920s, who played for Lancashire for a bunch of seasons. That was 100 years ago. His best first-class bowling figures were 8 for 41. And he was born in Launceston, which has a strong World Cup connection with David Boone, Ricky Ponting, James Faulkner, all being from there. But Ted McDonald's sort of too well known to fit into this, and this isn't where we ended up. I should note as well, separately, Steve was going to change this pledge to something else after he saw an old episode of Neighbours from 2012 where a character named Scotty, whose surname is never said in the show, is named in the credits as Scott Boland, which Steve thought was entertaining. And so in the end, he decided to stay with his original number as a better story, and I'm glad that he did, because as fun as the Scott Boland Neighbours diversion would have been, this is better.
There was a character called Scott who was a real tip rat who was related to the Rebeckys. He was the cousin of the Rebeckys.
Gel tips, spiky hair, gel tips, dark hair. That's Scott Boland.
Pour some out for Lynn Scully, by the way, the actor that played Lynn Scully passed away yesterday. I saw on my social media feed. So a Neighbours newsworthy link in the last couple of days. Of course, the on-screen husband of the man who scored 7 runs to win a game in Neighbours from the final ball many years ago against Carl Kennedy's 11. So it all ties back eventually.
Was that when did Bouncer run away with the ball? Is that what happened?
It could have been. Okay, so not that Scott Boland, but another Scott Boland.
Not that Scott Boland.
I wonder if they knew. So by 2012, was Scotty Boland playing for the Vics? Not quite.
Just. He would have. I think he debuted in 13 maybe 11, 12. He was around for a fair while but hadn't really made an impression at that stage. But I think he was playing back then, off the top of my head. We're not talking about Scott Boland. We're talking about Frank Ryan, which is a good, solid-sounding name. Francis Peter Ryan, who is inevitably Frank, a left-arm spinner of considerable ability, whose county career comes just after World War I, which is unusual in itself. We'll come to that in a moment. Normally, I would start with a birthplace. Where was this person born? We don't know, because Steve said that his birthplace was relevant to the recent World Cup. There are conflicting sources. Cricinfo says he was born in New Jersey. Some other sources concur. There's an obituary in the Times from when he died in the 1950s, which also said he was born in New Jersey. Other sources have him being born in India, in a place called Tundla, which is in Uttar Pradesh, which is the state where Lucknow is, in the north. And Tundla is a small railway junction town. It's near Agra, which is close to where the Taj Mahal is, to give you some sort of geography. It's a big railway junction on the line between Delhi and Kanpur, as in it's a significant junction, but a very small town. So Frank Ryan's born in 1888. We seem to have consensus on that. In the 1901 census, there are only 3,000 people recorded as living in Tundla. So presumably in 1888, it was even smaller. So what his family's doing out there as part of the British colonisation in India, I'm not sure. They're English. The family's English, but his father was born in India and dies in India as part of that British India generations who genuinely lived in that country rather than just dropping in. His brother is recorded as being born in India 5 years earlier. Frank Ryan has a christening recorded in India 1 month after he's born. So it's possible that he was born in the USA on some sort of family travels, and then they travelled back to India in time to get him christened. I don't know how likely that is, that you'd be travelling with a newborn or travelling heavily pregnant, but they could have been in the US for 6 months or something beforehand, I suppose. I don't know.
Is this a bit of
can't confirm this.
Right, but with the clue as it is, Occam Drazer and all the rest of it, that he would assume. I'm just reducing this back to New Jersey equals America, World Cup equals America. Thus, would it be unreasonable to just make that leap?
No. So what we were told by Steve is, according to Cricinfo, he was born in somewhere with a link to the recent World Cup. So that makes sense. Cricinfo says New Jersey, born in the USA. Bruce Springsteen, happy with all of that. As it was discussed in the investigations group, Tom Hanks had to go and find James Frederick Ryan. Well, he was looking for James Francis Ryan. He finds James Frederick Ryan of Minnesota when he's looking for James Francis Ryan of Iowa. We're looking for Francis Peter Ryan, who may be of New Jersey or maybe of India, and maybe it's not a surprise we had difficulty finding him. Maybe there are two. Maybe they got the wrong one. The other aspect
if our man Frank was a private, then we go full circle on that as well. Was he in the military at all at any point?
He certainly was in the military.
Nice.
But I don't know if he would have been a private because he was around the airplanes. But we'll come to that in a second. So the other thing is that he supposedly goes to live in the USA for a while, maybe for a year or two, something like that, after he finishes school. So he starts school in the Himalayas in Darjeeling, where they pick all the tea at St. Joey's. And then he goes back to England, as British Raj kids tended to do, and ends up at the Bedford School, where Alistair Cook went.
Oh, yeah.
And so he must be wrapping up school. He's born in 1888. He must be finishing school around 1908. They tended to study a bit longer and so on in those days, but something like that. Heads to the USA. Don't know how long he stays there. Interesting point is that he has absolutely no cricket of any note before World War I. So he's born in 1888, right? He's into his 20s. There is no record of him playing cricket at any level, not miscellaneous games, not county seconds, nothing. And there's no record of him playing for Bedford School. And the Bedford School have teams. They have scorecards that are listed from a bunch of their games. He's not recorded as playing a single game while he was at school. So whether he did or didn't, I don't know. But he's not a cricketer in any meaningful sense before World War I. A divergent question here. Why does the Bedford School website, when advertising its cricket program today, still list Adrian Shankar as one of its proud alumni? I shit you not. You've been trying to get
Scotty Oliver on the podcast because Scott wrote the 8-part opus around Adrian Shankar. Tell me if I've got this wrong, but I feel like that was a pandemic passion project from Scott.
Yeah, it was.
Who's gone on to write that beautiful book about international cricketers who played club cricket at some point. And that'll be part of our book club when I get a chance to line up the interview. But the Shankar files, I mean, it's book worthy, really.
Oh, yeah.
The great fraud who played for Worcester out of pretending that, was it Lancashire or Worcester, or both possibly, pretending that he had an IPL contract or something.
This is the interesting bit, right? So on the Bedford School site, they list 15 broadly contemporary players. They don't list any of the older ones like Frank Ryan. They list Alistair Cook at the top, and then 14 guys who played some county cricket or some England age group cricket. And fifth on that list is Adrian Shankar. So they go Alistair Cook, Ian Peck, Mark Snell, Toby Bailey, Adrian Shankar, who they list as Cambridge University captain and Lancashire. Now, he never played for Lancashire. He played seconds. He never got a first-team game there because he was shit-house and they punted him. And then he lied his way into Worcester and he got one first-class game and one list day game for Worcester before they realised that he was a scammer who'd made up his entire career. So why the Bedford School is advertising themselves, our fine cricket program that produced the most notorious liar in the history of like Walter Mitty fantasy sport, just about anywhere in cricket. I don't know why. And they've listed him as playing for Lancs when he never actually turned out for Lancs in any first team capacity.
Yeah, one of the quirky parts about that story, and I just had to remind myself when you were talking then, was that he actually did make a first-class 100. He made 100 in the varsity match of 2002.
Yeah, for Cambridge.
In hindsight, I should have asked Tom Hicks about this when we had Hicksy on the podcast about his book bowlers' names. I'm fairly sure he was captaining Oxford when Shankar made that 100. Did it feature in the book? Matty Floyd would have been playing at Oxford then as well, because Floyd made 100 in the varsity game around that time, maybe not 2002. Sadly, Floydie was going to be playing the game today, but he's had another thing come up. I would have asked him there, but this is a guy who was like around. He wasn't just like he wasn't as crude as he'd just made up that he played cricket altogether, which there was a couple of days after World War II.
He just wasn't very good.
Yeah, he just overplayed his hand.
So Chris Scott, not the Geelong coach, but the wicketkeeper who dropped Brian Lara on his way to 501, if I remember rightly, was coaching Cambridge around that time. I think it's the same Chris Scott. And he said that the bowling attack that Shankar made that 100 against was the worst bowling attack that had ever been put on the park, basically in a first-class fixture, because nobody was available. None of the Oxford first choices were available. They cobbled a team together. That's the only decent innings that Shankar ever put together. And on that basis, he then made up the rest of his career. Anyway, he's still Bedford School, still proud supporters of Adrian Shankar in his fictional career. So good for you. Whatever it takes to, I suppose, making up fictions in order to sell things is very much in line with the private school ethos. You know, send your children to our school and pay us $50,000 a year, and we'll make sure they do this and this. Frank Ryan, that's who we're talking about. He joins the Flying Corps during the war. So the Flying Corps is the Army aircraft wings. So I don't think they have the rank of private. They have airmen or something like that. But this is before the RAF exists. So the Navy has a wing, the Army has a wing, and then they become the RAF, the Royal Air Force, in 1917. I don't know what Frank Ryan did. Couldn't find anything. You can't get access to people's war records in Britain, as we've discussed. Was he a pilot? Was he a mechanic? Was he an officer? I don't know. But he survives the war. So either he wasn't flying or he was very, very lucky as a flyer, if he was one. I think there'd be more record of it if he was actually a combat or a reconnaissance flyer. They had a balloon division. They had ground crew. So maybe he did one of those sorts of things. Cannot find a thread on how in 1919 he suddenly gets a gig at Hampshire. Maybe it's just because everyone else has been killed off in the war and there aren't as many cricketers going around. But there's no thread before the war of his cricket that would suggest he's about to become a county cricketer. And he's already turned 30. He turns 30 3 days after Armistice Day and then starts his career in cricket the following season in 1919. So 2 problems. He starts at Hampshire. He hates Lionel Tennyson, the captain, not the poet, and he loves to get drunk. He's Frank Ryan, and he loves to get drunk. Also, he apparently has a really bad temper, and that gets made worse when he's drunk, and so he gets in all sorts of trouble in all sorts of situations and locations. He plays 23 games across 2 seasons, takes 60-odd wickets, and then very literally walks out on the club. He's like, I hate you guys, you pricks. His last game's in the middle of July. He disappears. And he walks. There are varying stories. I get the sense there's a lot of urban legend stuff with Frank Ryan. So some stories say he hitchhikes from Hampshire to Lancashire, where he plays in the leagues. Some say he hitchhikes from Lancashire to Cardiff, where he goes to try to play for Glamorgan. And some say he hitchhikes from Hampshire to Gloucestershire first, looking for another job. There's a story with some more detail that suggests that that's probably the true one. Hitches to Bristol, asks them to hire him at the Freaks. They say, oh, we can't, but why don't you keep going to Glamorgan? So he walks to Glamorgan, which takes another couple of days, arrives during a rainstorm and says, will you hire me as a cricketer? And they think he's an itinerant drunkard, which he is at that point, but they also say, hop in the nets and send down a few and we'll see if you're any good. And he sends down some left-arm twirlers and Glamorgan go, holy shit, this guy can bowl. We would like you to come and play for Glamorgan. This is the interesting bit, though, is that Glamorgan doesn't really exist as a first-class county at this point because they don't enter the championship until 1921. So I'm not sure if he rocks up in 1920 or in 21, but they're a minor counties team before that, but they're a weak side, and this guy rocks up and he can bowl, and they say, okay, if you're willing to qualify to play for us, then we will take you when you've qualified. So he says, okay, it's a deal. Moves to Cardiff, gets married in Cardiff in 1921, manages to play a season in the Lancashire Leagues somehow, waits another year because you had to do 2 years of residency before you qualify for a county. So he doesn't play for Glamorgan until he's 34 years old, and he's immediately a hit, Frank Ryan. Gets off the piss a little bit. He takes 106 wickets in his first season, in the English season, 2 wickets in the Scottish season because he gets picked to play for Wales. Beautiful. Suddenly he's a national representative and he's Welsh. He doesn't bowl in the first bowling innings. He gets both openers out in the second dig against Scotland, and he makes 52 not out, his highest first-class score, batting at number 10, and sets up a win for them. He'll end up playing 7 more times for Wales against the Scottish, the Irish, also the touring West Indies. That West Indies game, he gets Leary Constantine out in both innings. He takes 5 for 17 in the second innings after 3 for in the first, and he takes 4 catches off Sydney Barnes, SF Barnes, the great of the greats, who somehow qualifies to play for Wales. I don't know how. And he also plays for Glamorgan in a game against West Indies, and they beat him. They beat the touring West Indies side, which means a lot at that point because Glamorgan, frankly, are shithouse. They get beaten a lot. They get smashed up by most teams. They lose 13 games in a row at some point. But Frank Ryan is taking wickets. 1924, 25, 26, he takes over 100 wickets each season. But by 1926, he's back on the piss again in a genuine manner.
He drinks to get drunk.
Giving it a push at him. He drinks to get drunk, and he really drinks on away trips because his family's in Cardiff. So when they're on the road, he's like, "All right, boys, I've got 3 nights away. Time to get stuck into it," and he really, really, really does. I don't think he's a brawler. I don't think he punches on, but he gets in fights with his captains. He has arguments with county officials. He's always got some resentment, some chip on his shoulder about something, and then he has a bottle of whiskey, and then away he goes and gets into it. So there are a couple of stories that get repeated where these might be semi-apocryphal, but one of them is that one night he's so hammered on an away trip that he forgets where the team is staying. So he just ends up sleeping at the ground underneath the covers, and they find him in the morning just rolled up in the covers, sound asleep.
Who amongst us hasn't gotten so hammered they've forgotten where they're staying and slept on the 22 yards that matter most?
A shout out to one of my teammates at the Cherry Tree Hotel who, after a rare win, ended up spending the night rolled up in one of those large umbrellas that shield the tables outside the front of the pub. It was found in the garden by staff the next morning, sleeping in an umbrella. Can happen, all right? There, but for the grace of God. There's another game in Lancashire where they're playing back-to-back. They play 3 days at Old Trafford and then 3 days in Swansea. I went back through his record and checked this. There are 2 times when this did happen and this could feasibly be true. God knows what, like these players who are playing 6 days in a row and 3 days up north and then suddenly hustle your way down to Wales and then play 3 days there. So apparently he's on the lash so hard after the first of these fixtures up at Old Trafford because he's got mates in Lancashire from his leagues days. He's like, no, you go on, lads. I'll catch up to you. Yeah, you go ahead. You head to Swansea. I'll see you there. And then in the morning, he takes a taxi from Manchester to Swansea.
Jesus Christ.
And then rocks up and then gives the taxi receipt to the treasurer and says, there you go, champ. I'm here and I'm ready to bowl.
Well, I mean, think about the underdeveloped roads that would have been driving on. First of all, no sophisticated motorways or anything quite like that. There would have been like from Lancashire to Cardiff, or what do you say, Swansea rather? Swansea. That's a 6-hour drive now. It's probably an 8-hour drive. When did he finish on the piss at 3 o'clock? Game starting at 11. Says, I got enough time. I'll keep in the back of the taxi. Must have been. Yeah. Only way it could have worked.
Must have been. No, he must have been in the car by 2 a.m. or something and rocked up at 11. So the 2 games where he plays at Swansea back-to-back after an Old Trafford game, the first of them he takes 5 for 54 in the first innings, and the second time he takes 7 for 82. So whichever of those games it was, it didn't do him any harm, it seems.
No.
So we talked a few weeks ago about the Nottingham team of the 20s and 30s under Arthur Carr and pushing England towards bodyline and how they should have won the championship more than just once in 1929. They were going to win it in 1927. They need a draw in the last round to seal the championship. Frank Ryan at Swansea likes it there, wrecks them, takes 9 wickets, beats them by an innings, and Lancashire win instead. So he's this central figure in Nott's history because he's the prick who torpedoed their campaign in 1927. But his drinking and his arguments are becoming a problem. It depends who's captain and how much he hates or likes the captain. Glamorgan is still not very good on the field. He has a quietish 1928 season and they're getting ready to sack him. And then in the last few games of the season, he just takes a rush of wickets, finishes with 96 wickets for the season. And they're like, oh, well, I guess we better keep him. He likes playing under a teammate, Maurice Turnbull, who debuts early in Frank Ryan's career and then is captaining by the end of it. 1930 has another great season, takes 134 wickets at 20, plays against the Australian team with Bradman.
I was going to say, did he bowl to Bradman?
He did, got him out. So he'd already played Australia in, yeah. Yeah, so Frank Ryan can bowl. This is the issue. Is he can seriously bowl. His left arm is tall. He's got like nice loop and drift. He turns the ball a lot. They praise his accuracy all the time. So even though he's an absolute piss wreck, he's landing it on the spot. He plays the Aussies in 1926. He gets Jack Ryder out. He gets Ponsford out. He gets Johnny Taylor out. So he can bowl. 1930, he gets Bradman, Stan McCabe, Victor Richardson, Alan Fairfax. Ends up with 6 for 76 in the first innings. Bowls him out for 200 odd. And
England should have picked him in 1930.
Probably. He was close. Apparently, the reasons they didn't, those previously stated, that he was an absolute pisshead and he liked to fight with everybody who was in his team. So for those reasons, funnily enough, they decided not to pick him. But if Glamorgan could bat, they could have beaten the Australians. They can't bat. They're batting shit, so they don't.
Yeah, well, the Glamorgan did beat Australia twice. They beat them in 1964 and 1968, and that's still two of the most famous days in the club's history. I've seen on the walls there at Cardiff when you go and cover a game over there. They've got some beautiful pictures which reflect that, like as sort of the glory days of touring teams coming over and it being such a big deal to beat the tourists. Well, Glamorgan had their moments, absolutely. So, it would have been even sweeter had they beat them in 1930. Anyway.
So 31, still going well, 88 wickets in the season, but the club is ruined by this point. They've been battling with debt right from the beginning. They nearly hit the wall 2 years after they came into the county championship. They're always owing money to people. The squeeze gets really hard in 1931, and so they sack almost all of their professional players. They're like, look, we just can't pay you guys anymore. We've got no cash. We're broke. Their aim is to continue just with amateur players. They consider wrapping up the whole club entirely. In the end, they do a huge fundraising drive. They manage to just stay afloat, and that's kind of the position that they're still in, living year to year, I suppose. But that's it.
Not
for
anymore.
Frank Ryan.
Well, just not anymore, because you think about it, they're a 100 franchise. They're getting the moolah from the sale. So any financial viability issues with Glamorgan that might have existed, they're the one county you can point to. Who knows? It might be that Ryan Reynolds owns them soon enough in some
Frank Ryan
weird
Reynolds
structure that we were talking about the other week. Anyway,
Frank, he doesn't get picked up by another county. He drifts off into league cricket. Somehow he's still married. His wife hasn't left him. So apparently after away trips, Maurice Turnbull, his captain, would meet him at the train station and then just slip him some cash, because Frank would have spent all his cash on drinking. And so Maurice, as the captain, didn't want Frank's wife to think that he wasn't making any money off cricket, so he'd just give him some top-up money before Frank went home, just to make sure he had something to put into the kitty. I don't know how, but Frank Ryan ends up in the intelligence service during World War II. I don't know if he's just advising them on how to get shit-faced, but he's there.
Could have been a useful spy. I mean, I remember when I was in Canberra that was often cited as a part of the spy craft, because there are spies crawling all around Canberra, as you're told. You don't really know who they work for or where they hang out or anything like that. But yeah, I reckon someone with his ability to socialise when deep in could have been an asset. I don't know. I wonder where he was deployed, if at all.
Or whether he was just monitoring stuff as it came in, like intelligence was also Bletchley Park and all that kind of thing, the code cracking. The details there are scarce, but his captain, Maurice Turnbull, gets killed after D-Day on the continent, attacking a German tank column. Frank Ryan eventually ends up moving to Leicester with his family, where he sees out his days, nearly 43 years old when his first-class career ends, although he only manages 11 seasons of substantial first-class cricket. He does just get over 1,000 first-class wickets at the end of his career, 913 of them for Glamorgan. He's still sixth for Glamorgan to this day in that top six. Jack Mercer, who was a swing bowler, and Johnny Clay, the off-spinner, the three of them played together a lot. They became Glamorgan's core bowling attack during those early years. They're three of the top six. Malcolm Nash, the guy that Garfield Sobers smashed around. Wilf Wooler, who loved the man-cat and took the bails off 5 times at the non-strikers end. And Don Shepherd, who holds the record for the most first-class wickets without playing a test. So it's quite a top six. Frank Ryan's still in it. And in very true Frank Ryan form, unpin-downable. He dies in early 1954. He's 65 years old. Cricket Archive says he died on January 5th. Wisden says he died on January 6th. The Cricketer says he died on January 7th. No one has a fucking clue. Where was he born? When did he die? We don't know. He was somewhere on the piss. More importantly, where is he? Is he at the pub? Is he sleeping it off somewhere? Who knows? He's Frank Ryan. Brilliant.
He might still be with us. Who's to know? He might still be knocking about down the pub somewhere in his 120s or something like that. That kind of that sort of constitution. A guy who played first-class cricket until he's 43,000 wickets from nowhere. Great yarn. Thank you Jeff for telling us all about Frank Ryan, and thank you to Steve Dodkin for your patience. 8:41 was our first number today. We are overdue for our first break. Lots to come, though, on Storytime 195. This is Storytime. Adam Collins, Jeff Lemon. It's brought to you by Westfield London and Westfield Stratford City. Jeff, the Olympics are here. If a seemingly endless flotilla of countries, an insanely cool segment about the French Revolution, and someone accidentally flashing a testicle have filled you with 5-ring fever, that's a reference to the opening ceremony a few days ago, get yourself down to the official Team GB live site at Westfield London. You might think it would make more sense for the Team GB live site to be at Westfield Stratford City, where, of course, the Olympics were in 2012. But don't forget, Westfield London is built more or less on the site of the 1908 Olympic Games. Of course it is. White City, that being the reference point there. Come and bask in the reflected glory of the City of London Police, gold medalists in tug of war in 1908, and swimming silver medalist Sir Frank Beaurepaire, who later became a tyre magnate and the Lord Mayor of Melbourne, as you watch Team GB storm home to a respectable 5th in most pursuits. Westfield London, we promise there's no blue body paint. Yeah, that's an interesting point that's made there in the copy about the medal tables. You got to love the way the Yanks do it, Jeff. I mean, the Americans at the moment are by all tables, by all nations, 6th. They've won 3 golds. They are beneath Japan on 6, China on 5, Australia on 5. There are a couple other nations who've won 4 or 5 as well, including, I think, Italy won their 4th last night. America, 3 gold medals. They can't get the fucking job done. However, they've got more medals than anybody else with 19 overnight. So the American television networks put them at the top, breaking with all convention, because we're number 1. We are Team USA. It's not the first time this has happened. I don't think they were doing it back in 1984. Looking at Romania and West Germany in 84, who was second, who was third? I'm tipping it was Romania with more golds. But that's been something that I've quite enjoyed. But just generally speaking, can't.
We demand a recount, Adam. The medal tally has been fixed. It is crooked. It is crooked. In Pennsylvania, in the middle of the night, they've been adding silvers and gold, silvers and bronze. They call them dumps, big, massive dumps. And suddenly the next morning, the tally has changed. We don't trust it. We don't trust it, do we, folks? Do we, folks?
That's quite good. You've been more than one front rally. You know how to get into the swing. Yeah, I don't know about you, Jeff, but the Olympics is the one sort of event, not the one event, that's exaggerating it, but it is one of the events I can really conjure up the national pride. It doesn't take much at all. If I see an Australian competing in anything, I feel deeply invested in it. Molly O'Callaghan last night and Ariane Titmus going 1-2 in the 200 free, which I think is a blue rebound event. I think women's 200 free meets that criteria. Jess Fox a couple of days ago, we left the cricket field. We're told Jess Fox won. All the Aussies were all fired up. 4x1 relay on Saturday night. Grace Brown in the time trial on day 1. I mean, do you feel the same way when the Olympics are on? Does the Australian part of your brain move into overdrive?
To a point. Partly it's a memory of watching the Sydney Olympics and getting very invested in, jumping Jai Tarima and Tatiana Grigorieva and so on. The thing of finding yourself caring about sports that you had no interest in, not even a day before, but like 20 minutes before, and suddenly you're intensely watching the judo, you're watching, Lauren Burns in the taekwondo final and going, fucking get it, you got to lead with the left, and suddenly feeling like about sport. I mean, going back through the Matildas game that I mentioned earlier, there was a bit of that where it was like, they don't fucking want it enough. I've always said this. I've always said this about Zambia. They've got no ticker. They never have and they never will. So, yeah, to a point, it does happen.
Yeah, you're right about the sports that are a bit off Broadway. I got a little bit shitty and tweeted about this last night. Eurosport's got like this amazing coverage over here with the app and every event, every camera angle, anything you can want live. But they didn't have the fencing gold medal bout on the telly last night, so you had to watch it on the app. It was fucking worth it. There were 3 gold medal points where the referee had to take it upstairs and use DRS, these ones. It was riveting stuff, like the referee slowly walking down the staircase, reviewing the screen, and slowly walking back up. Main character energy. Well, before deciding which way it went. On 2 occasions, he said, I'm not awarding a point. You can duke it out again, fellas, before the bloke from Hong Kong won their 3rd gold medal in the history of the Summer Games. Like, we're conditioned to this now, right, Jeff? After Sydney and Athens winning, I think 17 at Athens gold medals, that is. And there's been a bit of a lull in recent years, although they did win 17 golds last time as well in Tokyo. But, this could be Australia's best ever Olympic Games. We're on track for it. especially if we keep ticking along in the pool. I think the men's 800 tonight's another gold medal chance. So by the time this goes live, it'll be irrelevant. But yeah, anyway, I'm all fired up. When I go overseas in a couple of days, I'll be tuning into all of this. I don't want to watch the Spanish coverage because, I don't speak Spanish. I'm going to need my Nord VPN because, Jeff, my subscriptions needn't go to waste. My Eurosport subscription better fucking work through my NordVPN. I'm going to back it in. All the countries it works in, all the servers you can access. I used it last year for the Women's Football World Cup when on holiday. This is what you need this time of year. Everyone's going to the continent. So many people are going away. Yeah, you need your flip-flops, you need your hat, you need your board shorts, you need your sunscreen. Do not leave the United Kingdom for a summer holiday or anywhere else for that matter, unless you've got your NordVPN. And we're better, Jeff, than the deal you're getting through the final word.
It's the deal of the century as far as VPNs are related. Anyway, the Olympic website's confusing as hell. Depending where you are, when you go onto it, it says you should be using this service or this service, and then you try to use it, and then you have to make an account, and then you need like a Portuguese phone number, and then you don't have one, and then you're trying to work out like what the actual page means because it's not in the right language, and it's complicated, right? It's complicated. You just restart the little computer, you turn on your VPN, you go, okay, I'm now in wherever it is that's going to make the most sense for me to be, and then you can calmly and rationally proceed. There's no reason why you shouldn't be able to do that. It's a very reasonable thing for a person to be able to do. And you can do it nordvpn.com/TFW. You can find the deal. You get a money-back guarantee. If you don't like it, if it doesn't work for you, just refund it. Done and done. You get a fat discount and you help support the show.
nordvpn.com/TFW. Next number is me, my first of the day, despite the fact that we're 3/4 of an hour into the show. Bayley Quinnell. Quinnell. What do you reckon?
He's the Quinella. He's won the Quinella.
437. It's in the AUD. Bayley is a new pledger, which is great. We love our new pledgers enabling us to keep treating this like a full-time job that we do. He's left a clue for me as well.
Yes, thank you, Bayley. He says the last first-class match of a left-arm quick and the debut of another, but a Novocastrian pacer outbowled them both in this match.
This is a fun one. This is a really, really good one. You know how I'm quite keen on things crossing over, links in the chain, and this has got a bit going on that front. The Novocastrians, the Sheffield Shield, the Southpaws, the works, all of this is good. We're going to go to March 2009, a time when I simply didn't have the ability to concentrate on cricket. This was a month after the $43 billion stimulus package was announced. This was an insane time in my life. This was a month and a half before the federal budget of 2009. This was total chaos. It culminated with me having to drive 3 hours on a Sunday morning after the budget had been, shall we say, changed radically by the Prime Minister the night before, which meant everyone was up all night and then it had to be driven out to him, a paper version to look at BP2 at like 9 o'clock the next day. And I padded up and made that drive out to the South Coast, wherever the fuck he was staying that weekend. That's what I remember this time of my life being, complete bedlam, and we got there in the end. But anyway, the Sheffield Shield was ticking over. And this was a game where WA were visiting the Sydney Cricket Ground. And what do you know? Southpaws, Mitchell Stark's first-class debut. He's such a baby. Mitchell Stark in 2009, I wouldn't have thought he was anywhere near making his professional debut by the age of 19. As a quick, you tend to debut a little bit later, but there it is. He was replacing Aaron Bird.
One days for Australia by 2012, 11 even, against those games against Sri Lanka, was it?
That's true.
Brisbane, maybe.
That's
2011,
true.
I think.
He did make his test debut, I suppose, in 11-12, so I shouldn't be that surprised that he was in the Shield 2 years before. He replaced Aaron Bird in the team, who was having a little bit of trouble with his action. He was over at the University of WA. By the way, if you want your I got my action tested at the University of WA t-shirt, Final Word merch, easy to get by looking in the show notes. Click on our link tree and you'll be able to sort that out through the great people at League Tees. New South Wales are on the cusp this season of finishing last, which doesn't happen too often. I went back and looked. How often have New South Wales actually finished last in the Shield? The comp expanded to 5 teams in 47-48, and they don't finish last in that configuration until 1968-69. Then it moves to 6 teams in 1977-78, and they never finish last with 6 teams until 1998-99, which seems a bit weird in a way, given how strong New South Wales cricket was in the late 90s. But they actually finished last 3 out of 4 years, and I suppose there's a link there to how strong they are, that so many of their top-flight players are busy on national duty. And then again, in 2005-2006, and then last year, or year before last, 2022-23, there are 2 more times. And the only one one in between all of that is the year we're referring to, 2008, 2009. They did, however, have a chance to leapfrog WA in the game that I'm about to tell you about, Mitchell Starc's debut. And they do a good job. They roll WA for 210 on day one. Nice enough start. Mitchell Starc gets 1 for 60, which is perfectly reasonable on his first day as a New South Wales bowler. For you trivia buffs out there, his first-class wicket is David Bandy, who was bowled by him. I swear he came up on the cricket field the other day. I was looking at it thinking, David Bandy, I'm pretty sure she had mentioned him when we were playing last week, but no, he was mentioning Daniel Bandy, the Fremantle player from the mid-90s. But they're probably relatives, right? David Bandy playing for WA, Daniel Bandy playing for Freo. I'd imagine they were cousins at the very least.
He was mentioning Barbara Banda, who was knocking in goals for Zambia before they went to choke. It was Zambia, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was Zambia, yeah. Opening the bowling that day wasn't Starc as the Southpaw. It was another one, Nathan Bracken. Per the clue, it was Nathan Bracken's last first-class game. So they are links in the chain. Mitchell Starc's debut, Nathan Bracken's last game for the Blues. But we did Nathan Bracken's career quite recently, so I'm not going to do that again. It was probably in the last 3 months we did a big Nathan Bracken story time. The Blues, after bowling out WA for 210, respond with 526 for 8 declared, with Usman Khawaja, you might have heard of him, a young Uzi, 172 not out. Now, I wondered, is it his maiden first-class ton as well? Not quite. He actually made one the previous week against Queensland, batting at number 6. His first 100 for New South Wales was 112 in the late February round of 2009. So he's on a bit of a roll here, 200s in a row, which helps elevate him. And of course, before we know it, he's making his debut for Australia at the SCG in the January of 2011. There are half centuries from Ed Cowan before he goes to Tasmania, from Greg Mail, the great run accumulator for both New South Wales and in club cricket. Dominic Thornley's the captain, and he makes a 40-odd. There's another 40-odd for a bloke who you might have heard of as well, David Warner. And it's also his first-class debut. So Mitch Starc's first-class debut.
Yeah, that's
David
right.
Warner, we know that he didn't play often for New South Wales before getting his baggy green. Well, this was the first of his 11 fixtures before he was capped in the Test team. It comes right after that wild T20 international debut at the MCG. They plonk him straight into the Shield team at number 6. Khawaja gets bumped up to number 5, and he takes just 48 balls to get to 43. So that's kind of on brand for what we know Warner, even though, of course, most of his career is as an opener. But yeah, there you go. Nathan Bracken's last game and the link through to Mitchell Starc and David Warner. They end up with this huge lead and 104 overs to bowl out WA, and they don't manage it. They get 248 for 4 the second time. The Whackers with the aforementioned Bandy top scoring with 87 not out. So it's a draw. New South Wales do finish last. And for all of those great links, the one I missed here intentionally, the guy that was referred to as outshining both of the Southpaws, was the New South Wales bowler who took 4 for 37 on day one. It's a quick with a great name and a great story of what could have been. Burt Cockley. I sometimes confuse Burt Cockley and Gary Putland, two guys who were around the same time, Cockley for New South Wales, Putland for South Australia, and neither of them go on to make it. But Cockley had his moment, and he was closer to it than I actually thought. His story is worth telling you. From rural New South Wales, Newcastle, he doesn't play in the Shield final at the end of that year, but they do give him a contract, and he does take a couple of fifers in what turns out to be a really productive season. So New South Wales are battling, but Cockley leads their wickets, 27 at 22, a genuine bright spot, including this forfer to end the season against WA. And it's enough to get an IPL look. He gets picked up by the Kings 11 Punjab, having never played a T20 before. So on the back of one list A game that year where he was totally smashed, they dump him into the IPL, which is bizarre. Indeed, you look at his overall career, he only played one T20 ever, and that was in the Champions League 5 years later for his second state, a story that I'll come to in a sec. So this shows how fast and loose.
I want to see more of this. I want IPL to be run like this. Like, fuck Ben Jones. You know, forget Freddie Wild. Forget all this, we've done the analytics. We've crunched the data. We think this is a good matchup. No, I want pure hunch. I want someone who's like, you know what, I saw this bloke on TV 6 months ago and he got annihilated. Anyway, I liked his action. Let's get him. You know,
I don't think it's unrelated to the fact. I genuinely don't think it's unrelated to the fact that he took these wickets at the end of the season. Because, you know, like the IPL would have started in April. He finishes well. He leads New South Wales. It wouldn't have been on telly, but it would have been,
Cockley.
I guess,
Cockley.
and a distinctive name, Burt Cockley.
Yeah.
Hard to forget that.
Burt
kind
Cockley
of name.
energy. BCE.
And then, yeah, remember, he's played one list A game, never played a T20, goes to the IPL, doesn't play. Then Australia pick him to go on tour on their limited overs trip to India in 2009. Now, this ends up being quite an important trip for Australia with Doug Bollinger leading the attack, another left armour. But Cockley, out of nowhere on the back of this Shield season, no white ball form at all, gets taken to play for Australia. Unfortunately, had he got a game, it would have been one of the all-time great bolters. But sadly, he was only a member of the squad. And sadder still, when he gets back for the 2009-2010 domestic season, does a stressy straight away. So that's it. Only plays 2 games for New South Wales to begin 09-10, having led them, having gone to the IPL, having gone overseas with Australia. And it really is it. He never plays for New South Wales again. Very sadly, he picked up an ACL injury when on the way back playing grade cricket, bowling a bouncer, his knee went from underneath him. Then the poor bastard got staph when they were doing the graft on his knee. He got very sick and they had to remove the graft out of his knee. So that was it with him at New South Wales. He ends up going to WA, the team that he bowled so well against in early 2009, to get a second start in his cricketing life a couple of seasons later after he'd fully recovered. And he does actually play a game against the England tourists in 2013-14, the first-class game for I think it was called the WA Development Squad or something like that year. It wasn't an official WA game, but does get a game. But a couple of games for WA in his second season, and that's it. 14 matches, 44 wickets at 28, an IPL season for no games, an Australia tour, only 8 white ball games in his career, but with that pace of movement, totally what could have been. He's still only 38 now. He should be at the end of his career, but instead, sadly, he was cut down before the age of 30. The postscript to all of this, he's, until very recently, been with the USA based in Dallas. He did a sports science degree at Kansas in the States, and that was enough to get him back into cricket. He was working for years as the strength and conditioning boss at USA Cricket. Previous to that, when he was playing for New South Wales, by the way, he was on the ground staff at North Sydney Oval. So he did a complete change of career. So good on him for that. His actual title was head of physical performance with USA Cricket. So not just the strength and conditioning, but the overall remit, I suppose. And now performing a very similar role for Cricket Queensland. He's just taken it on. He was working with the Freedom in the USA, who won the MLC a couple of days ago with Maxi and Travis Head and Steve Smith, something we'll talk about on the weekly show tomorrow. And judging by Burt Cockley's Instagram page, he looks like he's leading a very healthy, fit life with his young family. I suppose you'll always have that story, though, one of the many stories from his brief career of running amok on day one, the first day that David Warner and Mitchell Starc received their baggy blue caps, and a day when Usman Khawaja made his first big statement for them as well with 172 not out. So there's that link in the chain. For Burt Cockley, who played in the game, 437 our number for Bayley Quinnell, 4 for 37 the figures for Burt Cockley that day at the SCG.
Remarkable, and that I mean, it's a really bad time to get injured as a bowler for New South Wales at a time when Mitchell Starc and then Pat Cummins and Josh Hazlewood are all coming through within that year or two, really. I mean, you know, Cummins is playing Test cricket by 2011, so he's on the New South Wales radar before that. But
Copeland.
Imagine it must have burned so much at the time to think that you're so close, right? To get in an Australian squad from nowhere and you're like, holy shit, you know, the wind's at my back here. Like everything's going in my direction. Everything's working for me. You know, one more move, someone drops out, whatever it is, and I'm playing for Australia. And then to go from that to injury follows injury, you know, to pick up the infection in the hospital. It's just a cursed story to end up with more trouble than when you went into hospital, which, you know, too many people unfortunately do with those antibiotic-resistant infections that circulate within hospitals. But bloody hell, it must have taken a long time to try to put that behind him and actually move on with his life and be happy about it, I suppose. Didn't think I'd be saying this at the start of the day, but Burt Cockley, put him on the interview list. Be an interesting conversation to talk to someone about how you get through a life like that. Yeah,
maybe when we're in Brisbane this year, if he's open to it, because if he's with Queensland Cricket, I see no reason why they wouldn't be open-minded to that, and we can tell his story a second time, or he can, in his own words. All right, Jeff, we've got to take a second break. We've been rather slow so far today. We've got 2 more numbers to get through on Storytime 195. Adam Collins, Jeff Lemon with you here on our Weekend History Show, which this week is coming out on a Tuesday because that's how these things work sometimes. Harsha G 309 is our next number. It's in USD. He's been with us before, Harsha, so thank you for repledging. And that's how the The Storytime world goes round. If you've done it before, you can do it again. He's got a clue for you. It reads as follows. If you know my previous pledge, then you know where it happened. If you know Bharat's answer, you know who was on the commentary panel. The 309 is not something you see on a normal scorecard, but the third is remembered by a lot of people. So I assume the third relates to the 3 at the start of the number here. It definitely is memorable and is a game I saw live in the stadium. Okay, bit going on here. Enjoy.
Thank you, Harsha. And you've had a long wait as well, so sorry about that. I had to try to unravel what was happening on the episode when Bharat was doing an answer that related to this. That was Storytime 115, so that's a long while ago now when Harsha was last on. So Bharat talked about the 2010 India-Australia Test match in Bengaluru, where Tendulkar made 214. I believe that was the number. Yeah. Marcus North made his 1,000th test run. Tendulkar made his 14,000th test run in the same game. Just a bit of alphaing there. And because Bharat had a pledger named Harsha G, obviously he ended up talking about Harsha B, and I just wonder and all the rest of it. Took us a while to try to figure out where we were going with this number. The 309, the same ground, the third. So we're looking at Bengaluru. We're looking at some link with the commentary. And eventually it wasn't that far away at all. It's only a couple of years later. It's India playing New Zealand there in a test match. The visitors make 365. Ross Taylor, 100. Martin Guptill, 53. Freddie Kruger Van Wyk, 71, the wicket keeper at that time. Pragyan Ojha takes 5 wickets, the leg spinner. India respond with a similar total, make 353. Suresh Raina and MS Dhoni make 50, so both of Bharat's subjects for the books that he's written about Indian cricketers. Kohli makes 103. This is Kohli, it's early in Kohli's career, so this is his 10th test match. It's just his second 100. He makes that breakthrough 100 in Adelaide a couple of tests before, and then goes on and makes this 100 in Bengaluru. So this is a big deal for him. Tim Southey takes 7 for 64, but India are able to take enough runs off the other bowlers in Bolt. Jeetan Patel's there, and somebody else who I can't remember because I didn't write it down. I think James Franklin's in that side, and they've got another out and out seamer. New Zealand go reasonably well third time around. Ashwin takes 5 for 69 early in his career as well. Nobody makes a 50 for New Zealand, but they all make reasonable scores. They get to 248, so they lead by 260. Jeetan Patel's smashing them at the end. He's whacking boundaries around at number 10, and then he gets given out caught behind. He's nowhere near it, and Jeetan Patel walks off spitting chips because he didn't hit it. But 261 to win, that's a big chase in a test match like this. There have only been 3 bigger run chasers in India to win a test in the 4th innings. Sehwag and Gambia go nuts off the top, 77 from the first 71 balls. It's mostly in Sehwag style. They're laying into the quicks. They're not doing anything really outrageous, but they're playing through the covers. They're punching off the back foot. They're playing on the up because you can. In India, there's no lateral movement, particularly with the newer balls, so they score quickly off it. And then Jeetan Patel, Sehwag charges him, smacks him down the ground for 6, tries it again and gets bowled for 38. Very Sehwag. Gambia gets bogged down for a while and then gets caught at slip off Bolt trying to sort of glide the ball away. None for 77 becomes 2 for 83. Tendulkar and Pujara bat together early in Pujara's career too. And Pujara's quite aggressive. He's quite positive in this innings, which is not necessarily the way that he plays later in his career. But Kruger Van Wyk, the keeper, is off the field for some reason. And there's a bit of commentary. I think it's Simon Dool who's doing this, where he goes, well, New Zealand certainly don't lose anything by having Kruger Van Wyk off the field because they've got Brendan McCullum there. He's a wicket keeper as well and blah, blah, blah. McCullum then immediately misses a stumping off Pujara, who goes on to establish a solid partnership of 69 with Tendulkar. Nice. Tendulkar gets bowled by Tim Southey for 27. Nice cutter that's decking towards the leg side. He's trying to clip it across the line and it beats his shot, hits the front pad and ricochets back onto the stumps. Pujara out for 48, gets caught by short leg running back. Suresh Raina does a Sehwag, charges Jeetan Patel, misses it, and he's bowled for a duck by one that keeps low. So they were 152 for 2. They go 152 for 3, 158 for 4, 166 for 5, and it feels like this is where you lose a run chase, right? This is Stuart Broad getting on a roll at Durham in 2013. There's that cluster in the middle of a run chase where they're 5 down, there's still 95 to get, and this is where this test match spins again, and it really becomes the Kohli breakthrough match because Kohli hasn't cracked Test cricket really at this point. He's already a really, really good one-day player. He's been in the ODI team probably 4 years by this stage. He's played a lot of good chasing innings. And so this is kind of his comfort zone. He's got the chase. He's got the setup. He knows what he needs to get. He's batting with MS Dhoni, the other great ODI run chaser for India. And Dhoni is aggressive early. He's not always aggressive early in an innings, but he takes pressure off his partner. I wonder how calculated that was. So he attacks the spinner, slog sweeps Jeetan Patel for 6, goes after him and maybe gets Jeetan Patel taken off, and maybe he's trying to work the bowling, influence New Zealand that way. They've only got seamers apart from this. Doug Bracewell's the other seamer, I just remembered. So they're bowling those guys, and Kohli's able to drive off the front foot when they get too full. Dhoni's just able to keep working the ball around, and after that early burst of aggression, he settles down a bit. Kohli starts to get a bit more aggressive. The tempo works. New Zealand don't have that many options, basically, later in the chase. Kohli picks up momentum. His last 33 balls, he makes 34. And from a position where they were in some trouble, India finish it late on the 4th day under lights. There's been a bit of rain earlier. Dhoni hits a 4 and a 6 to finish off the game in his style. They've put on 96 runs from 5 wickets down. This is a tense run chase. The crowd in at the ground are super worried about it an hour and a half earlier, and then end up in jubilation right at the end of that 4th day. 3:09 being that this run chase takes place on the 3rd of September. The match starts on August 31st, so day 4 is the 3rd of 09, which is why the 3rd is remembered by a lot of people, as per the clue from Harsha. And on the commentary, I didn't hear, I've watched quite a lot of this game because you can find bits and pieces of it. I didn't hear any of Harsha Bogle on the commentary. I don't think he was doing this game, but there was a lot of Ravi Shastri. So maybe that's the link to Bharat, where if Bharat doesn't answer, you know that Ravi Shastri is related to it in some way. Even if he's not mentioned, Ravi is carried in Bharat's heart. So that's how I'm choosing to interpret this. The 3rd of 09, 2012, that is belatedly our answer, as we've managed to, I think, solve your riddle, Harsha G.
He's nothing but consistent, Ravi. I ran into him in the States, in New York, when going out to lunch with a friend of mine from Australia who lives in New York now. And I mean, it was nowhere near where we were located on Long Island, by the way. It was down in Manhattan somewhere. I ran into him at the bar, and he had a pint in his hand. He's like, it's a day off. Time to get the pints in. He's like so on brand for Ravi. It's like midday, like, yes, here we go. Day off. Get on it. He's an absolute belter. Looking forward to seeing the big boy when won't be long, will it? Border Gavaskar. Fuck, only a few months away. As ever, he will be an entertaining commentator and doing his thing, doing million MC gigs and just being Ravi. It's a great life that he leads. Thank you to Harsha for your patience. That was, what do you say, Storytime 115. And this is 195, so 80 story times he had to wait, but that's okay. He's been with us for a long time. That's just sometimes how it breaks. Next up, we have another newie, another newcomer, Max Harris. Now, Max is pledged in USD in greenback. Thank you, Max, for getting involved. 206. It's for me. There's a clue.
This is a nice story. Max says, I'm a Canadian who's lived in the US for a few years. After several American Thanksgivings as a single guy having nothing to do, I decided to go on a big overseas trip, went to my first ever match, a T20 International, and had the best time. I started listening to your podcast to follow and learn about the sport and became a huge cricket fan. Love this, Max. The following year, I went on a Thanksgiving trip to Cape Town, picked up a copy of Jeff's first book at a local store. Good to know they're still selling it in South Africa. And took in some franchise cricket at Newlands. On the same trip, I watched a fair chunk of a test match going on at a different location. It looked so picturesque, if I may, on TV. I thought I must attend a match there. 3 years later, I convinced my then girlfriend, now wife, Beth, to spend Thanksgiving abroad. We went to a T20I at the place I had dreamed of visiting. We saw a century, a hat-trick, and I checked off a bucket list item. And while my American wife won't sit down to watch Test cricket with me at home, when I'm watching a match at this particular ground, we get to remember our time there. It means the world that I got to go there with her. The 205 relates to the original Test I saw on TV from this venue. It wasn't a particularly close match, but it's really about the place, what inspired me to see it, and how special it was there to go there with Beth. Isn't that nice? Got a bit misty.
It is nice. And we kind of go full circle on the show as well, because I mentioned at the start I played in that minor counties team the other day with Dan Lincoln, who played a bit with Middlesex, and Toby Greatwood, who was a seamer at Middlesex. Max Harris is another of that generation who was playing at Middlesex on a rookie deal with Toby. I'm not sure where he is. I don't think he's still on the books at Middlesex, but he was a bowler of some promise. Of course, he was known as Bomber, because anyone that's got the last name Harris in the UK invariably gets the nickname Bomber it's Arthur Harris, isn't it? Bomber Harris from World War II, the bloke that bombed Dresden and all the rest of it. I think that's right. Anyway, digging back 20 years ago.
It's
20 years before.
In fine taste.
It's a long way back to university. Yeah, quite. But anyway, you know what it's like. It's a lovely clue. A ground where I've actually never been. I've never been to Mount Maunganui. It sort of feels like I've been there given how much we've focused on the Bay Oval over the time. But I was keen to learn a bit more about it. So some history on the Bay Oval. It opened in 2007, started getting internationals in 2014. Blake Park is where it's situated. That had been a venue, but they decided to redevelop it. And it's very much in line with those...
That could be a cricketer. That could a New Zealand cricketer called Blake Park, I would totally believe.
It sounds about right. But it's kind of in line with those New Zealand grounds that we both love, right? You know, is there a better place than being there at Hagley Oval in Christchurch to cover Test cricket? I mean, it's different to other Test venues, but it is gorgeous. Similarly, Seddon Park in the Tron is pretty cool as well with those big, deep grass banks and so on. And Mount Maunganui Bay Oval's got a similar thing going on. The Bay of Plenty Cricket Association decided to really go for it in 2005, and it was opened in 2007 for the Northern District's first class team. The first one-dayer, 2014, but it didn't feature New Zealand. It was Canada-Netherlands as part of the World Cup qualifiers for the 2015 tournament. They played them in New Zealand, so that's a bit of a quirk there. March 2014 is also when the first time the White Ferns took the field at Bay Oval for a couple of one-day internationals against South Africa. Interesting that it wasn't picked for the 2015 Men's World Cup. So, I mean, it definitely would be now. If they were hosting a World Cup now, there's no doubt that it would get the nod. But back then, I think they used... I'm trying to remember. Was it Lincoln was the other ground outside of the main few that got an opportunity? Anyway, so it wasn't there in 15. The Test match that Max must be recalling and watching so fondly was the very first Test match.
Dunedin got matches in the World Cup.
In the World Cup, you're right. Dunedin did. Yeah, that's right. And there was somewhere... Plymouth. New Plymouth, I think. I don't know if that's even a thing. Is that right? Yeah, anyway, it's a while ago now. Like a decade ago, Christ. But it took them until November 29 to get their first Test match. And yes, this was the one where England were there. It's often been described as the Jofra Archer Test, something that I myth-busted recently on the show. You know, the suggestion that Archer bowled a disproportionate number of overs, which doesn't really line up. If you want to know why, you can probably find that in an episode from a couple of months ago. England made 353 in their first innings. It was Sibba's debut. Bless him. Love Dom Sibley. Stokes made 91. Southey took a 4-for. New Zealand then batted the 201 overs in reply for 615 for 9. And that included the number that we're looking for here. Well, at least one of the two numbers. The 205 was what was made by BJ Watling. He made that in 473 balls and 667 minutes, an innings that, Jeff, you and I have talked about before when BJ Watling announced his international retirement a couple of years ago. He put on 261 for the 7th wicket in a painstaking punch-the-bruise kind of stand with Mitch Santner, who made 126, batting down at number 8. Brutal for a fielding team with the track doing absolutely nothing. And when England had to bat a second time, scoreboard pressure got the better of them. They were all out for 197. They would have been knackered by that stage. And a famous day in the career of Neil Wagner as well, taking 5 for 44. As for the game that he went on to attend, this will be, now looking for a T20I with a hat-trick and a ton. Well, let's go to November 2022, when India were visiting just after the T20 World Cup, by the looks of things. Remember, this was the year of Surya Kumar Yadav in the T20 form of the game. He was unbowled toable, right? He was just playing 360 in a way that, we see occasionally, but he was doing it with such confidence and panache that he was doing remarkable things. He's been named as the new T20I captain for India, by the way, Jeff. I neglected to mention that on a weekly show 2 or 3 weeks ago. And in this T20I, India made 191 for 6, and SKY made 111 not out of that in 51 balls, as you do. There wasn't just the ton, there was the hat-trick as well. And this was in the bedlam of the 20th over, which Tim Southey was sending down. Southey went from none for 34 to 3 for 34 from balls 19.3, 19.4, and 19.5. I took a little screen grab here of the text commentary. Hardik Pandya hauled out to long off. DJ Huda, full ball on middle stump, flick behind square, but straight to a diving fielder at short, fine leg, so a duck for him. And Surya Kumar Yadav, by the way, is down the other end and can't get the strike in the final over. And Washington Sundar, it's his world and we're just living in it, as Daniel Norcross would have me say, is the man that comes out around the wicket, full outside the off stump. Washington goes for what's described as the glory shot. It goes to long on and it's taken. And that is the hat trick for Tim Southey. That's interesting as well. So let's just go back through a couple of things here. Southey took the third T20I hat-trick ever on Boxing Day 2010, some nearly 12 years before this. It says a little bit about how long Southey's been going around for, having made his international debut all the way back in 2008. And I spoke earlier about how different my life felt in 2009. Well, Boxing Day 2010, the day that Southey takes that hat-trick, is when Australia are all out 98 at the MCG to England. It just feels like a totally different planet, and it is in so many ways. With this appearance in 2022, he becomes the second bowler to take 2 hat-tricks. But now there's 5. So in the space of a couple of years, not even, 18 months, we've had 3 more achieve that. This is really good. Nice way to end the answer. I'm sure you'll know straight away, Jeff, because you were at it, another bowler who took 2 hat-tricks in a hurry in T20 cricket recently. You were commentating. You were there.
Pat Cummins, yep.
Pat Cummins, there you go. Very nice. So Pat took 2 in 2, one against the Bangers and one against somebody else. Maybe Afghanistan in the loss, maybe, possibly.
No, it was the game before that. It was honestly, like I was actually thinking about it when you were talking about Southey. I was like, could that be the most forgettable consecutive hat tricks imaginable? It was the Scotland game late in the piece in that first innings. It was during the Super 8s? I can't even remember anymore.
What's that thing about a test match we'll remember every detail of for 50 years, and a T20 we won't remember for 50 minutes. There's a little bit of that about this. It just happened, and I don't really know anything about that tournament anymore, other than the final possibly, and maybe 2 or 3 other bits.
So it must be the Scotland game, because it's the last game of the group stage, and then the first game of the Super 8s is Bangladesh, isn't it? Super 8s Australia played India, Afghanistan, Bangladesh, but not in that order, the other order. So it so Bangladesh were first. So it must have been the last game of the pool stage. I can put it back together sort of retrospectively. Must be Scotland, Bangladesh, and he should have had 4 and 4, but Warner drops the catch.
Oh, that's right. Anyway, I'll take your word for it. So Pat's the third. Lasith Malinga also did it, by the way, along with Southey, much earlier in T20I history. But how about this? It's happened twice very recently. So this is the beauty, I think, of T20I stats being liberalised since 2019, 2020, when every game played between 2 nations that are associate members get status, right? Now, Wasim Abbas took a hat-trick for Malta against Belgium in 2021, and then one against France in 2023. So Wasim Abbas, and even better than that, Mark Pavlovic for Serbia took 2 in 2 days last June. How the fuck did we miss this? So on the 23rd of June, Mark Pavlovic, Big Pav, what's that thing that Pav said before the 2013 grand final? Get those Superman capes on, boys. It's Wharfie time. Against Croatia in the big grudge match, 23rd of June. And then the 24th of June, the next day, he took a hat-trick. There was a tournament being played in Sofia in Bulgaria. Entirely possible that Gebor Turok was there, our final word international player for Hungary. I don't know. We'll see. Pavlovic, I actually know, looking at the dates now, I can realise why we didn't cover it. This was the 23rd of June.
Yeah, back to back. That's big. This, I mean,
sorry, Turkey, Croatia,
terms, right? Those are big. Yeah, those are big.
Yes.
There's a couple of big rivalries there.
So 23rd and 24th, we said last week, we talked about that crazy week where we were going Birmingham to women's test to my wedding to Lords. Well, this is right in the mixer here. This would have been during the women's test and just before the wedding. So that's why we would have missed it. That's understandable. A fair bit happened at Lords that week, which distracted us for the next weekly show. But yes, Pavlovic became the 4th to achieve it, and then Cummins the 5th. 2 hat-tricks in 2 days in that tournament last year in June. So yeah, I love the fact that, we've got a list that includes Tim Southey, the most ever wickets in T20Is, Lasith Malinga, who played, in a couple of World Cup finals and won the World Cup for Sri Lanka in 2014, Patrick Cummins, who has also won a T20I World Cup in 2021 and, one of the all-format greats, I suppose, having won a 50-over World Cup and the best test bowler in the world most of the time. And yet you have these 2 other guys, Wasim Abbas from Malta and Mark Pavlovic from Serbia, with them as well, having 2 hat-tricks. So a nice, satisfying way to leave that answer for Max Harris 206. Great to have you with us.
Get them in there. Dream dinner party. Get the 5 of them down one side of the table. make all the Americans mad because they're like, it's a parody of The Last Supper. No, it's not, you fucking morons. Read a book, Jesus Christ. Not that one. Read a different book. You've read that one book. You've read the Jesus Christ book. Go on. Branch out. Imagine there is a world beyond your understanding. You've got a train to catch, so let's call it there. That is story time 195. Thank you for being with us. Thanks for sticking it out to the end. If you want to send in a number, patreon.com/thefinalword. You might as well get on the list. It's a good time. You can get the ad break free feed there as well. If you want it, you can become part of our online community. Hang out, have a nice time. It's a good time to do it. Thanks to Westfield London, Westfield Stratford City. You've got the other links and whatnot for NordVPN and so on in the show notes, and you'll have more from us coming up with a weekly show looking at the news and action in the game later in the week, and then a couple of interviews that I mentioned on the Daily Show will be coming up too, with Jason Holder in the works and Adam Zampa to come after that. And some other things that we're working on that may come up during August. It's always a busy feed on The Final Word. Thanks for your company. Thanks to Adam Collins for being the other half of the show. It'd be hard to do it for either of us on our own. That's it. I'm Jeff Lemon. We'll see you next time.
Enjoy the Olympics.